Next, we have item 9C. We're going to have a presentation of the General Obligation Bond Advisory Task recommendations to the City Council regarding a potential general obligation bond election.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Casey Moore, Director of Management Services. I had the pleasure of serving as the staff liaison to this task force, which you all appointed earlier this summer, and they have accomplished their tasks that they were given, and they'd like to come before you tonight and give you those recommendations. And then following that, we'll have staff come up and walk through the projects that have been recommended as well. So I'd like to, I won't get into too much as far as thanking and recognizing people, because I think other people want to do that, but when we finish up later, I'll come up and close this item. I will, at this time, I believe, just Jay Lemon, the Vice Chair, is going to be ready in backup, and so we'll welcome the Task Force Chair, Todd McInnes, to present.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you so much. Jay Lemon has my back, and so I appreciate that. My name's Todd McInnes. I live at 154 Evermay Drive in Edmond. And so the next slide is the most important thing I could say right now. If someone can allow me to move it forward, I will. Christy, I've never done this in my life.
Where's your spectacles?
Did I tell you I'm not billing for being here tonight?
You need to get up there and do this.
I tell you, I told Jay Lemon about if Barry Moore says something nice like that about me, like he said everybody else that got up here, then my life will be complete. So, geez Louise. This is a group of men and women that met 4 different times over 2.5 hours per time. And you'll see the dates coming up on the next slide. And I believe more than half of them are here tonight to just evidence their investment in our community. And I will say just at the outset, and Jay can attest to any and all of this, it was such a pleasurable experience to work with men and women who can speak with authenticity and with truthfulness and with respect. And I believe that happened throughout the entire process. I am sure, as with any board any of us have ever been on, people come to the room with different personal agendas, and they have an idea they're trying to get accomplished or what, but that was not evident in any sort of selfish or inappropriate way during the 10-plus hours that we met. And so I was overwhelmed with the idea that we'd leave there at the final time with a list of projects and with the resolution, and I underestimated the quality of the people that were there. And so Jay and I just basically sat still and watched wonderful people do great work. And so with that, I want to thank all of them that are here today, and I think more than half of them are here. I've looked around the room. I think I've seen 2/3 of them. So with that, the business at hand was that the council, as you know, asked this task force to look into something that Edmond's never done before, which was identifying a potential GEO-bond financing program that would address 3 significant areas in our city. The task force, as I said a minute ago, met on those dates. It was on a pretty accelerated timeline, which was daunting but was effective to get us moving forward in the process. I made a huge mistake at one of the meetings by not taking a break. I learned that lesson the hard way from one of the members of the committee, but we made it past that. And so you asked us to do 3 things. One was to identify the time range of what a bond issue program would look like, what the millage rate would be, and then which projects to undertake. And so we went through that process, and Chris and Alan are here with BOK and Alan Brooks' law firm that were wonderful resources, as was the entire city staff. Steve Lawrence got called to the podium countless times, as did many other staff members. And so the result was the idea of a target mill levy of 15 mills over a span of 10 years. Based on the growth rates that Chris mentioned in our group, that number generated a gross number of $231 million for bond revenue that would be used for the projects that were identified. So that was kind of task number 1, if you will, or 1A, B, and C. And then the issue was what projects might fit. And I want to say this, because someone said this to me online that I did not respond to, that this was just a rubber stamp for what the staff wanted. And I can tell you the staff had wonderful input into the process. But there was a give and take and a dialogue that happened and was organic through each meeting. There were items that were identified by the group. There was adjustments made to the list. There was great discussion by the staff as to how they came up with even their list. And so it fell into these three categories: streets and bridges, parks and recreational facilities, and firefighting facilities, buildings, and equipment. Those are the three that came out of that. The allocation of the projects came up with these summaries. Streets and bridges had 15 projects that we identified to recommend for you all to consider, for a total of $151 million. Parks and recreational facilities had 6 projects for $70 million, and I believe staff are going to speak to these specifically after Jay and I are done. And then the third one was one new fire station, and the buildings and equipment was one project for $10 million. So those were the three categories. Alan can speak to it better than I can. I understand there's potentially, if you guys move forward, 3 ballot questions that'll be right in line with these items that were identified. So these are some of the things that the group considered in our discussion. What were pressing issues throughout the city. Issues related to safety. We had specific examples of pedestrian safety and traffic safety. As we looked around the city of Edmond, there was a dialogue with respect to various activities, UCO, there's activities all over the city, and were important as to what might be relevant to how we solve problems that exist. I can't stress enough, this wasn't just a gold medal wish list of things that sound like wonderful things to do with $230 million. They addressed projects. There was a significant dialogue related to economic development impact. You'll see that with a couple of the Parks and Recs facilities, with the soccer complex and with Mitch Park specifically. This was key, I think, in our dialogue, and there'll be public comment at the end, so if anybody wants to add to this. But people wanted the city to be able to say that they could get these things done. So if you went with the bond campaign and say you're successful, then in 8 years from now you wanted to do another one and you hadn't got anything done, that would be pretty embarrassing. And so there was a lot of pressure on Steve Lawrence and his staff to answer the questions, can you actually get some of this stuff done? And that was a dialogue that took place within the group. Kind of a broad stroke of geographical representation. There's a spreadsheet you have in your packet that shows the breakdown by wards. Some of them are general, the overlay of streets throughout the city, but some of them were more specific by ward, and that was important. And then this was discussed with pretty good detail, is the idea that since the 20 years of the CIP has existed, I think $140 million of that $280 million has been spent on roads. And I think there's a general idea that wasn't the selling point when the CIP was approved in 2001. And so if we're able to do bond financing, maybe there's an opportunity for those CIP dollars, capital improvement project dollars, to actually be used on things more exciting. Maybe even more motivating for citizens than just roads and overlay projects. So that was the general consensus on the key considerations that were discussed with the group. I don't think you want me to go through this list because I think staff is going to do it, but this is just the highlight of the streets and bridges, and then the Parks and Rec, and I mentioned Mitch Park. You can see the dollar amounts that are there. The soccer complex was a big number. The Veterans Memorial was a very significant item, was passionately represented by one of our task force members, and we talked about that. This new park at 2nd and Post, pump track that I understand, I look forward to staff talking about. And then I know Chief Goodwin is here, could speak to the fire station. You've heard about that before. This is, I think, relevant, and let's see how many more I got. Okay, that's it. All right, so the question came up, well, how do you make sure that this gets spent the right way? And so from what I understand is that we have to have no less than 70% of the dollar amounts be specifically assigned to projects. So then that leaves 30%. And the dialogue amongst the group was, well, what if we would like that to be more specifically allocated than just a 30% margin? And so there was a dialogue about that. And so you'll see the last 3 bullet points on this list. When it comes to streets and bridges, all but 15% are specifically allocated. Similar percentage with respect to Parks and Rec, and even a higher percentage for the fire station. And so there was just a great desire for there to be accountability, that those dollars that are being raised, if in fact they are, that they be spent. Steve Lawrence made a great comment about the contingency he believed were in his numbers. So I think that gave the group some confidence they didn't need a huge amount of contingency, so let's be more specific so the citizens know what they're buying with their vote if they do that on the ballot. So that was relevant to how that was going to be managed. And then a couple just general recommendations from the task force they asked us to communicate to you guys. Is that you guys decide to have a general obligation bond oversight committee, that there be a group of citizens that are not just a rubber stamp that just say yes to whatever staff wants, but they are really involved in the process of spending and be accountable for those dollars. I mean, everybody knows that sunshine's the best disinfectant, right? And so that was a desire, I think, from the group. And the last one was really just not even, it was really important. It's like, hey, let's make sure the citizens know what they're doing with their dollars. We've all seen it in different places. You know, this project funded by bond obligation of 2018 and Broken Arrow or Norman or wherever it is. And we think it's important that citizens know where their dollars are being spent. So Jay's talking our ear off, so I'm going to stop and see if he has anything to add. But that's the report and the recommendations, and I'll end the way I started. Thanks for the men and women that got together for very little pay and very small snacks during the time that we were together. So with that, I'll answer any questions, but I'll be entertaining anybody else that wants to speak.
Very good, thank you, thank you.
Oh, Jay Lemon would like that.
Jay, did you have anything you want to say?
Hi, Jay Lemon, Todd's associate, one of the members of this committee. I do consider it an honor to come together, and I echo the fact that we put 25 men and women in a room with a task, and it was very civil, and there was a lot of personalities, a lot of different wishes and wants, and everybody came together, I thought, remarkably well. A lot of great information provided by the staff and led well by Casey and others. Appreciate that. As always, I think we all know that everybody's got a wish list much longer and much more in depth than our budget ever allows. It happens that way in my house, it happens that way in my work, it probably happens that way in the city of Edmond. I do think that this is a significant step forward into committing, let's go to work on some of those projects. And the city's done yeoman's work on things that we've asked for in the past, I believe. I learned a lot of history about the city of Edmond and their budgeting process and everything else. But I do think this is a very significant step to playing catch up on things that have been identified by this council and several groups prior to that haven't been accomplished yet. And this by no means gets us to arriving somewhere, but it gets us on a good path going forward. So I'd strongly consider the acceptance of that. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
So next, we want to invite up our subject matter experts. They're going to walk through the list of projects quickly, going over those, and if you have any questions, obviously want to give you the opportunity to ask those, but this is the list that the task force ultimately recommended, and so we'd like to let our staff walk through and talk about those. So we'll start with Steve Lawrence.
One thing.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
Before, Council, did you have any comments for Todd or for Jay? Or any questions at this?
Not any questions.
Or comments? I mean, I just didn't want us to keep going, and then all of a sudden you had something that you wanted to say. I know Barry's not going to say anything about Todd, but I just wanted to know.
I will about Jay.
Yeah. Okay, very good.
Steve Lawrence, city engineer. Been asked to talk a little bit about the street and bridge projects we've got on the list. All this information is on our website. You know, search City of Edmond GeoBonds, and this list will come up. The first project on the list is the overall street overlay reconstruction throughout the entire city. It's something that our citizens have let us know over the last few years. They'd like our pavement to be maintained in a little bit higher condition than it's being maintained currently. Right now we spend between $4 and $5 million a year on resurfacing streets. The committee came up with a figure that we can pretty much would be able to double the amount that we're putting into it. So right now we have we completed testing of every street, all the 1,150 lane miles that Edmond maintains in the city of Edmond. We tested every street, so we should be getting that data this fall, and we'll be able to outline a program of all those streets. Part of the GeoBond process, we had to actually go through and list every single one of those streets that we plan on resurfacing, and we were able to do that. So next on the list is 2nd and Boulevard intersection improvements. So this is one of the busiest intersections in Edmond. It has, throughout the years, we've seen quite a bit of growth, and the capacity expansion is needed at this intersection. Part of kind of making the downtown area a little bit more pedestrian friendly and friendly to bicycles, And what we've done with the rest of downtown, it shifts traffic around a little bit. So we have more traffic on Boulevard than we previously had. We've got everybody that's driven through knows that there's a little bit of a misalignment in the two roads on either side of Boulevard. So we're going to straighten that out, add a lot of capacity, but also greatly increase the pedestrian safety in the area. Next on the list is Covell and Santa Fe intersection improvements. So this is an intersection that a few years back we made some what we called interim improvements at this intersection. They helped a lot with capacity, but as far as pedestrian safety or bicycle safety, we've got a lot of people in this area that really want to get to Mitch Park. Everybody kind of south of Covell, a lot of people in this area are looking for connectivity to get to Mitch Park. Additionally, we do have some safety issues at this intersection. If you drive through it, you'll always see a guardrail pretty much damaged, which they've been doing their job. They've been saving the people that have been hitting them, but it's also, we have some safety issues with that. So this project will, it'll widen the intersection a little bit, add a little bit to the capacity, but mainly also bring in pedestrian and bicycle and access as far as like similar to what we have on Covell, on the rest of Covell with the wide 10-foot sidewalks. That's one of the goals for that. Next intersection is widening of Covell from I-35 through Air Depot. So one of the busiest intersections that's shown the highest growth in the last 5 years is Covell and Air Depot. All the development that's going out in northeast Edmond, as well as it being one of the few on-ramp and off-ramps that we have on I-35 in the area leads to that. You all know that the schools also own the land at the southeast corner and have plans to build an elementary school and first phase of a middle school in the area. So that's coming fairly quickly. So we're wanting to get this area. So it'll be all the way from I-35 through Air Depot. We have a lot of safety issues through this area, as well as just capacity at that intersection. See, the next intersection is Kelly and Edmond Road. So several of these projects came from our Edmond Shift program, our Edmond Shift study, which looked at kind of the high injury network, where crashes happen on our roadway system. This is one of those intersections that is really high on our injury network. One of the goals is to kind of minimize, eliminate fatalities, minimize any kind of major injury. And so this is one of the higher injury intersections. So with that though, we've got a federal study, a federal grant for a study of quite a few of these intersections. So should be studied fairly soon to look at ways to improve safety at these intersections. This is one of the intersections. When we go through that, we'll also look at what we can do. So we expect to possibly get some federal funds to help match on these intersections. But we'll also be looking at capacity improvements. A lot of these intersections, they haven't been looked at in a really long time. They might need a right turn lane or a left turn lane or a longer left turn lane. A lot of them we have our intelligent transportation system in place so that we're moving as much traffic as we possibly can through whatever geometry is out there. But the core emphasis on this will be safety and getting a little bit more capacity. So that's one of those intersections. The next intersection is 15th and Bryant. Very similar, high injury network, have a lot of crashes. So we'll be looking at it in a very similar way, addressing any improvements we can make for safety, as well as adding as much capacity that we can for that intersection. 15th Street corridor between Broadway and Boulevard. This is also in the study that we're talking about, looking at high entry network. This is one that we hear about a lot, but we'll go through and make as many improvements as we can, capacity-wise as well as for safety. Danforth Road widening from Holly Hill to Thomas. So there was an effort years ago to put turn lanes in front of all the high schools in Edmond. This is the last one, and it hasn't happened yet due to funding. We were able to realign Thomas with the first kind of half of this project. That helped quite a bit. It still has an issue with safety as well as just traffic getting through there, improving the flow. So Edmond North has shifted a little bit how the students come into the school. So us making improvements at the intersection of frets is going to help with that greatly, as well as a lot of parents that use this road to get to John Ross, turning left onto Thomas from it. So this one will be a little bit of everything: safety, capacity, as well as being nearby a school. Santa Fe and Edmond Road improvements. This is an Edmond Shift project. Has a lot of it's in the high injury network area, so it'll be very similar to the other intersections, maximizing capacity and making it safer. Covell and Western. So working on the Covell corridor, it being kind of envisioned as one of the major corridors in Edmond, we now have signals kind of, as far west as Santa Fe and as far east as Sooner and I-35. So where we have kind of the biggest congestion, traffic issues is just outside of those. So this one being on the west side, it's a four-way stop sign, and it is actually one of the areas that I have the most complaints about as far as traffic. So we'll be looking at, with this intersection and several others, we'll be looking at kind of unique types of design. We'll see if a roundabout's appropriate here or whatever other design is feasible. So this will be mainly for just kind of the intersection area. It won't, extend widening on Covell, a half a mile either way or a mile. It's really will be just centered around the core of the intersection. So that's something that we're looking at, is kind of improving the capacity of the intersections and doing what we need to for the rest of the corridor. Coltrane widening north of 2nd Street. So this was originally a project that we were looking at, a 2-mile section from 2nd Street all the way to Covell. We didn't have enough funding to fit all of that into this. So talking with the committee, we thought it was important for us to kind of get the section, the 1/4 mile north of 2nd Street. So that's the part that'll be kind of near the uncommon grounds. It's as well as it's an area that we've had a lot of issues with capacity. So we'll make a correction on the map. We still have the 2 miles shown, but we'll revise that to, it's pretty much just 2nd Street to a 1/4 mile north of 2nd Street. Let's see, 2nd Street, Garland Godfrey, crossing safety improvements. This is an area by UCO that receives a lot of attention. There's a lot of students that cross in this area, and it's just a very awkward crossing situation. So one of the Edmond Shift safety projects was to kind of reconfigure this crossing and make it safe. So that's what this project is. North University Drive improvements. This also stemmed from Edmond Shift as well. It is basically University from 2nd Street all the way around to Chowning. It's an area that we, years ago, we kind of did some restriping to make some bicycle lanes. We just kind of did it. It was kind of a cheap way for us to, try a few things out there. So this project would be to actually go through this corridor and make it much more pedestrian friendly and safe, as well as looking at making the bicycle lanes fully protected instead of just some striping that's out there. So that's what this project's for. let's see, Thatcher Street improvements. So this was also, it's mainly a pedestrian improvements in this area. There's a lot of pedestrians that, since Thatcher is one of the few crossings in this area, there's a lot of pedestrian and bicycle traffic that goes through this, and the infrastructure we have out there is just not very conducive to pedestrians or bicycles. So that's what this is for. Final one is the intelligent transportation system. So that one's kind of a hard one to describe, but basically connecting all of our signals to technology and being able to real-time move as much traffic as possible. This fall, we've already given to ODOT with our federal funding for this phase 4 of the project. We currently are just wrapping up phase 3. So we'll have about 65% of our signals connected. Phase 4 will get us to about 80% of our signals connected. So really the funding on this is for phase 5 to kind of wrap up our signal program and to kind of go back and look at some of the first signals and make sure they're all up to the right kind of technology. But this intelligent transportation is, it's really the best bang for the buck on anything that we spend for transportation. It's much cheaper than pavement, and it allows us to get the most out of the geometry that we do have in place. And I think that's it for the street and bridge projects. So I think, you got any questions on those?
It's a great list.
Okay, good.
Good rundown. Thank you. There's a lot. It shows a lot of roads need improvement. Thank you.
So next, I think Brad Rainey is going to come up and talk about the parks projects.
Okay, I'll quickly go through these projects. First one here is Mitch Park. We have quite a large dollar figure, and I'll kind of explain what we had in mind when we proposed this. First of all, the ball fields. There's 5 softball fields, 4 baseball fields, and thank you. You kind of have an idea of a price tag of what that costs, is what I just presented before. They're in rough shape as you're seeing the pictures go by, and we're pushing a bunch of people there. So this is an opportunity to kind of address our final eyesore, I guess, of a sports facility and have something pretty incredible. I'll also mention that, as you know, Mitch Park is adjacent to Cheyenne Middle School. Those 2 of the baseball fields are used for middle school practice and games too. So there's a lot of the projects I'm sure you've noticed benefit schools too, and that was discussed quite a bit on the committee. There's a picture of a guy there walking along a drainage ditch, which isn't ideal. You see that quite a bit at Mitch Park. Steve talked about Santa Fe and Covell wanting to get people to Mitch Park. Once we get them there on foot, we want them to be able to walk around the park safely on foot. So Mitch Park has a great trail that goes around the park, but to kind of get from one thing to another on foot, there's no sidewalks, there's not great crosswalks. We want to improve that because it is busy at Mitch Park. There are so many cars going through, and that needs to be looked at too, how traffic moves around the park. So that's a major thing we want to accomplish with this. And finally, just amenities at the park. That could be the playgrounds. You saw pictures up there. The Ambucks, the All Abilities playground needs to be replaced. That's a large playground. Shelters, trash receptacles, drinking fountains, lights, all those things would fall under amenities. I think one thing exciting about this project, if it does pass, we are planning to develop a master plan for Mitch Park, so the community will really get a say of what this looks like. Next one is just neighborhood playground replacement. This, I think, is one of the smallest dollar figures, but I think it has the opportunity to make a huge impact. And this is playground focused, but it could be things like basketball courts, tennis courts. It's going through our existing neighborhood parks and breathing new life into them with new equipment. And this funding model could allow us to do a lot. Right now we're doing one about one a year, we can replace a playground with park tax funds. So this could really allow us to transform all of our city parks as we know them. And there's a list that goes kind of into how we break down the spending of the funds, how we estimate it. The next one is the soccer complex renovation. We did just complete a project, and that was focused on restroom and concession facilities. There's a master plan that identifies up to $30 million worth of renovations at this facility. So this would be to address some of the critical ones. Probably number one is parking at that facility, some field lighting. There's opportunities to light further fields, address an aging irrigation system, field surfaces. We'd work with our stakeholders on developing that project. The Creek Bend Trail is the next one. That would be completing this trail. This is one of the few trails that we have on this list, and that's because we anticipate owning the land, and we have to be able to own the land to do these projects. So we're completing the ends right now. This would be to finish the middle section. And I'll just mention that you see the Spring Creek running through there. It will involve 2 crossings of the Spring Creek, so that's just a little bit costly to do it, but it'll be a beautiful trail when it's done. There's the Veterans Memorial Project. I think this is fairly shovel-ready. There's plans developed. There's a committee that's been working on this for a long time and been working to raise funds, and this is an opportunity identified by the committee to fund this project and build it. And then finally, really the only new, like most of this is focused on upgrading and taking care of what we have, but we do have a new park proposed on this, and that's at Post and Second. This was an opportunity identified in the Arcadia Lake Master Plan. This is on property that we own. It does involve bicycle facilities, a bicycle track or a pump track, but there are traditional park elements like playgrounds and places for people to stop on Route 66 and picnic, but it would tie into the existing and popular mountain bike trails and try to capitalize on that going on out there. And that is the list of our projects. There was lots proposed, and they did a wonderful job of narrowing these down and prioritizing them. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good, thank you. Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chris Goodwin, Fire Chief. I've just got one project to talk to you about today. That's the Fire Station 3 relocation. We actually brought more projects to the GeoBond Committee, and they did very thorough work, and we ended up pulling one of those. We had 3 that we submitted. We pulled one after the first meeting, and then they settled on this one, which I will say is our highest priority. It's the one that needs to be done the most. It's an aging station, 41 years old. As you can see there in the picture, it's a very small station. We've had lots of maintenance issues with it over the years, and it just doesn't work well operationally for us. We have difficulty housing mixed genders of firefighters there, which is a very important thing to us. But we also have issues with backing in, so it creates safety issues for us. We've known for some time that we needed to relocate this station, and so we've actually been searching for land for several years. We wanted to move it a little further east, and as you remember, we closed on land last year at just south of Kelly and Danforth at the intersection of Hawthorne Lane and Kelly Avenue. And so that property is there waiting for us to work, and so we're excited about this project. It needs to happen. Needs to happen soon, and so timeline-wise, we're ready. As far as should you approve this and the voters approve it, we would be ready to start design work and get going as soon as possible. So that's the project that I have to talk to you about, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good, thank you very much.
Mayor, I do have a question for the chair or vice chair or someone on the committee. Is this an appropriate time?
Yes, think while it's fresh on your mind.
Okay. One of the recommendations was the 15 Mill Levy Rate and a 10-year term,
Yes,
and it says it was approved 20-2. And so I know there's some discussion in the community by folks not on the committee wondering where that came from, what the justification was. Should it be less? Should it be shorter? Should it be more? And so I didn't know if you could maybe speak to some of the thought process behind that recommendation.
Thank you. I'll start to try, and if someone wants to supplement, I'll be happy to defer. We had two schedules that we had in front of us at every meeting that showed millage rates and what the impact would be on an average house priced on the multi-list in Edmond right now, which I think was $307,000, which I think was the number. So 10 mills is $300 a year. 15 mills is $450 a year, and 20 mills would be, of course, roughly $600 a year. And so the spreadsheet that we looked at, and it's not up here, but it would show what would that impact be and what it would look like if you did it over the various terms of whether it's 5 years or 7 years or 10 years. Is that right, Chris? Oh, thank you very, very much. And so part of the thought process was 5 years sounds really, really quickly. I feel like you'd be constantly in a cycle of having elections. And then there's a cost or a question that was discussed about the cost of the money and what interest rates would do to the amount of funds that you have available to actually put into the dirt. And so I don't know that I have a great answer as to how it settled on a certain number, because there's 25 people talking about what that impacted them or the people that they had talked to and how they felt comfortable. Someone made the comment, hey, it's $40 a month if you looked at 15 mills. And in my mind, I never thought about it monthly. I thought about what my annual tax bill is. So I thought of it differently than the other people in the room. I can just tell you that as we looked at this slide that I have here that shows the gross numbers, it was really an interesting dynamic because there was a couple comments that were made. The huge dollar amount is really hard to conceptualize. It's kind of like monopoly money. And so what really matters? Does it matter to me if it's $230 million or $156 million? No, what really matters is it's going to cost me an extra $480 a year or $450 a year. And so I know that was the give and take in the dialogue. If you would have asked me to guess at the very first meeting, I would have guessed the number would have been smaller. But there was a dialogue in the room that said, hey, if we're going to do this and it's a big deal, then we need to do a big deal because we're probably not going to do it differently if we ever get the chance to do it again in the future. There was a dialogue about other cities that have millage rates. Oklahoma City keeps their target around 16 mills. And so the number's not exact because it has to do with ad valorem values, but there was a general consensus by the experts in the room that once you set a millage rate, and if you get a chance to come back in for a second bond issue in 7 or 10 years, it's really nice not to come in and increase that millage rate. And so that was part of the dialogue. And I'm not fumbling here, I'm just thinking that's my recollection of what we discussed.
And that's exactly what I wanted you to share with kind of the general public, what that dialogue was like, what you were looking at, what you were assessing, that it wasn't just sort of a random thing, right? And so that's helpful to hear that it was a robust discussion, there was a lot of thought put behind it, and that's a lot of folks recommending coming to the same conclusion after,
Yes, ma'am.
analysis.
So two things I think I would just like to add to that is the dialogue was very robust about that because everybody came from different standpoints as to what was moving them with respect to how they might look at the economics of the whole deal. And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting is a couple comments might have been made with respect to how we came up with the number. And I made a joke one time, I go shopping with a budget instead of what my list is. And some people may go, I just need to go buy these things. So you had a different, what's the best way to navigate through our little task that you gave us? Is it come up with the gross number or come up with what your revenue is that might be? And so that dialogue went back and forth. And the last thing I'll say related to that is every board I've ever been on, nonprofit, for-profit, you always wish the consumers and the constituents would have the benefit of the dialogue that happens in the room because it was sincere and because it was thoughtful and because it was sensitive to the reality that these dollars are not monopoly dollars, they are real dollars that we're asking people to potentially spend and asking the city of Edmond to be the trustee of. It was a very encouraging process from that standpoint. And I'm sure nobody here is going to out-negotiate irrational thought process or crazy comments online. But it was methodical, and it was thoughtful. And I do believe there was considerable effort to make sure that that was the product that was delivered by the group when we left the room on the last meeting.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, another thought. The meetings were recorded and they are available online. So if folks are listening now in the room or online again, if you want to hear some of that discussion that Mr. McInnes described, certainly encourage you to go and listen to that.
Correct. Thank you, Councilmember Mugg. All of that information can be found at edmondok.gov/geobond. And you can go there, you can find the map that the staff just walked you through. You can find the recordings of the meetings. You can find the agendas, the minutes, all those sorts of things. So those are all the things we want to present, Mr. Mayor. If you want to take comments, I think there's some people that may want to speak, so I'll leave that to you.
Oh, no, I was going to see if the council had anything else they wanted to say at this time or any questions. And then this is a public hearing, and if there was anyone out in the audience, I know that there's a lot of people that are here from the actual committee. I'll just tell you, everyone doesn't have to get up and say the same thing because we hear it 2 or 3 times and we've heard it. But we do welcome all the comments that are possible that can shed additional light or information or thoughts that you may have. So I'm looking at the council. They don't look like they're not in question mode stance. You have to understand they have a certain stance they get in, and they're in the receive mode now still. So is there anyone in the audience? Yes, sir.
So I'm Greg Westmeyer. I'm the past president of the Firefighters Association. I've got my driver Taylor Mick here with me, and we're going to share a few thoughts on the what the Firefighters Association thinks about the bond.
Yeah. So like Chief Goodwin said, basically Station 3, it's always in a constant need of repair. As of myself and I can speak for the Firefighters Association, we're for the bond. Relocating this station will allow us better response times. We've got one of the best cardiac arrest survival rates right now. So moving that station to that area will allow us quicker response, bigger station, able to utilize more rigs in there that will help us to provide a better service to our citizens.
We're really blessed, and we thank you guys for all of your support over the years. And through that, we've been able to get to an ISO rating of 1, which lowers the citizens' insurance rates considerably when they go to get their insurance. And the station location is a big part of that. Having the appropriate equipment in the right area. For example, that's an area that we may want to put some of our tankers and different things in. That will only house 2 pieces of apparatus right now. So that station, so it's pretty small. It was built, we all laugh and say you could sit in a lawn chair on Danforth when it was built back 41 years ago. So it's definitely outlived itself. And we just want to come here tonight and support all the people on the committee that have worked really hard, and we thank all you guys because we're really blessed to work in this community. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience? Yes, sir. Please come down, state your name.
Hi, Richard Reich, Mountain View Park. I served on the committee. Thank you for allowing me to do that. I just wanted to add to Todd's comment about how we arrived at the millage rate because it was a difficult thing for us to get our arms around. But I come from the north, so we're used to property taxes that support these kind of things. And Edmond is the only city of any size in the state that doesn't have a sales tax or that doesn't have a property tax. Part of their taxation to raise revenues. And so we also, in addition to comparing ourselves to Oklahoma City, we compared it to other municipalities in Oklahoma. So we did not feel that 15 mils was unreasonable, but it was in that 10 to 15 mil range that we thought other cities of our size and consequence had also used. So that was also part of our decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay. Well, that was very informative. I appreciate the team coming together. 25 people, different backgrounds, different wants and desires. But you all had one common desire for Edmond to be a better community. So you all came with your list, listen, and from what I could tell you, listen to understand, not listen to respond. And so that's why we're here today. Okay, that was our presentation. So now let me move 400 pages back. Now we're on under 9D. This is 9D, consideration of the following items related to calling of a special election on November 5th, 2024, for the purpose of submitting to the registered qualified electors of said city the question of issuance of a general obligation bond. Discussion and consideration of resolution number
26-25.
26-25, authorizing the calling and the holding of a special election.
I'm sorry, I said that wrong. 25-24. I'm sorry.
We have to start all over. Got to start the whole
From the
meeting.
beginning.
Run it back.
Hold on, Corey, did I get that
Run it
right?
back. Hold on, let me double check. I think it's 27, 24.
27-24.
There we
Strike
go.
that. 27-24.
Today is August 12th, 27-24.
Yeah, that's right, Corey.
Let's start again. Discussion and consideration of resolution 27-24.
24. This is what you're wearing.
Authorizing the calling and holding of a special election in the city of Edmond, state of Oklahoma, this city, on the 5th day of November 2024, for the purpose of submitting to the registered qualified electors of said city the question of the issuance of general obligation bonds of said city in the amount not to exceed the sum of $231 million, to be issued in series to provide funds for the purposes of constructing, reconstructing, repairing, improving, and rehabilitating streets, roads, bridges, and intersections in the city, including lighting, sidewalks, bike paths, landscaping, related drainage improvements, driveway reconstruction, utility relocation, and other related improvements. Constructing, expanding, repairing, which may also include improving, renovating, acquiring, and equipping parks and recreational facilities, all to be owned exclusively by the city. And acquiring, constructing, expanding, renovating, repairing, and/or equipping firefighting buildings, facilities, and equipment, all to be owned exclusively by the city. All to be completed with or without the use of other funds, and levying and collecting an annual tax, in addition to all other taxes upon all the taxable property in said city for the payment of the interest and principal of said bonds. Providing for election procedures, authorizing professional services agreements pertaining to the issuance of said bonds, and containing other provisions related thereto. Special election proclamation and notice hereby authorizing the calling of a special election to be held on the 5th day of November 2025.
24.
Oh, 24.
That's what you're wearing.
Yes, my bad. 5th day of November 2024.
Congratulations on getting through that. So we were fortunate through this process to have great bond counsel, and so I believe Alan Brooks, and I'm not sure, Chris, are you also speaking? So we're going to welcome Alan Brooks up to walk through this item with you.
Thank you very much.
Well, this, again, to echo what's been said, has been a really enjoyable process. Chris and I attended all of the meetings with the group. They asked great questions.
Mr. Brooks, could you speak up, please?
I can.
Thank you.
They asked great questions, and it was a very enjoyable process. My part's pretty easy here. The documentation that you have in front of you, the resolution, that's the document that has to be adopted by the city council to effectively call the election, put this on the ballot on November 5th. As has already been noted, there's 3 separate propositions. Those are listed in the resolution. That's exactly how they'll appear on the ballot. Those rise or fall independently, so each one would be voted on by the voters. As has already been noted, you have to identify where at least 70% of the proceeds of each of those are going to be spent. You're well in excess of that on each of these propositions. You've been more specific than is required by state statute. If you adopt this resolution this evening, we would file the documentation with the election board, and we're off and running. Now, I'll be happy to go into as much detail as you want, but I think we know what the projects are. We know what the propositions are. You've got the language in front of you. We'd be happy to answer any questions. If there are questions relative to the millage rates, financial impacts, Chris can address those as well.
Any questions? Would I also at this time ask if there are any questions from the audience, or do we want to wait till the end? Well, I'm going to ask now. Let's just take it in small bites and increments so that we don't lose it. Are there any questions from the audience on this next phase that we just discussed about the language? Okay, very good. Let's move on to the next. No, I didn't.
Unless you have questions, I didn't have anything to add, really.
You didn't have any?
No.
Wow, this is, okay. Hold on, we see I knew, yes, sir. We do have someone from the audience who does have a question.
It's not a question, it's a comment. If you're opening it up for comments or not.
Yes, questions and comments, sir. Please come down and introduce yourself.
Taylor Wilson, 748 Dune Circle. I just want to make sure, at least communicate to the public, this is a needed tax increase of approximately 15% based on the calculations. But based on the committee, which I was not on, but observed all but one, it is a tax increase. So we can't, I just want to make sure from a public perspective, we're not hiding from that. But it is needed by all the projects are there, and based on the feedback that I've heard on the streets and the safety and everything. So that's it.
Yes, sir. It is a tax increase. It is a needed. I don't know if you were, I think you were here earlier today when we had our strategic plan halfway review, where we had over, which, you know, this is good reading information for everyone, that these are each year for the past 20 years, the staff and council have come together and created a strategic plan of what's needed out there. Our councils have listened to our citizens and what they want in our community. And so we implemented it in here. So a lot of the things that we've talked about in this GO bond supplement this. So they're needed. Our community is growing. Something that a previous city manager, 2 city managers ago, told me that we have to have money to take care of what we got. Because if you don't have that money, people are going to stop wanting to come to your community. And we need people to feel safe for the quality of life. They want great educational opportunities. And guess what? They want to have a good time here. And so that's these projects help enhance that, help us take care of those things that are near and dear to each and every one. Even if you don't want a tax increase, I will guarantee that you still want to live in a safe place. You want the people living there to be educated properly, and you want to have fun. So yes, thank you, sir. Well, any other comments? Well, council, that's item 9D. That's calling a special election. What would you like to do?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to make a comment. I agree with you. People come to Edmond by choice. We're a community of choice, and the reason why people come is because of quality of life. And this is a historic opportunity to make an investment into our quality of life. It's great to see the parks and how, you look at Stevenson Park, which is known as Rocket Ship Park, you look at the new splash pad, and how that just revitalizes people and energetically gets them to engage with their families and their communities. People have asked, is there going to be some sort of opposition? Given the roads presentation, if you're in the tire and shocks business, I'd be a little worried. Spending $4.5 million as we have on getting our pavement addressed, I think the feedback that I've heard, and don't want to speak for others, has definitely been, hey, let's get at it and let's do more. And this represents a more than kind of doubling of that commitment in regards to those. And so when we look at a historic investment, it centers around those three pillars of why people come, and that's our roads, recreation, and public safety. Had an opportunity to bring some of our good little kind of scout kids over to station number 1. Man, it's an awesome station, but yeah, it's old. It was built when I was 4 years old, and I think
That's old.
It's so old. I know. I think, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that the station where literally the beds come out of the wall? You're in this dark room, and then a light goes on, and then you got to like throw your bed up, and you're like, it's. We ask a lot, and I think just a comfortable bed would be nice for our firefighters. It's a historic investment. I also agree with the committee, which was a broad committee. Shoot, I'm surprised you're even able to agree on the snacks, knowing some of you guys were in there, and then you came out of there like you did so united. It's really refreshing. But I would like to see a bond oversight committee of some sort. I think that recommendation has merit. The number one thing that I often hear from citizens is, well, put it to a vote, like let the people decide, right? And so really we're putting that historic investment of roads, recreation, and public safety into the hands of our fellow citizens. Those dollars will be prescribed to those projects with citizen oversight, with city council continued engagement and approval. And there's a real opportunity there. So I trust our citizens. When you get elected, they have you put 2 goals or a goal or 2 on your city council bio. I'm not sure anyone ever reads those things unless they're super hyper mad about something to go try to find my contact information. But my goal was make Edmond, Oklahoma the best place to raise a family and call home, ensuring that we have the best transportation, recreation, public safety, and public service for our residents. Goal number 2 was give Edmond voters the opportunity to vote up or down, dedicating funding to support the best transportation, recreation, public safety, and public services for its residents. I think that today speaks to a multi-year effort that this council, previous leaders, previous mayors have worked towards. And I'm proud to vote yes to put this in front of the citizens, because whether it's supporting our veterans, doing our parks, public safety, roads, recreation, public safety, I think they have merit that we can be proud of. So thank you for all your hard work. Thank you for the presentations, and I'll be voting yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. In November, when the council established the 25-member committee, 25 people come together. I believe I know every person that served except one, and she was one of them that I appointed. She called me and said she wanted to get involved. I didn't know her. I said yes, and I put her on there. I don't think she's here. But what's important to me is that the 25 people that served, the men and women that served on that, did that because they have an opinion and they care about Edmond. And I know the process was fair. The chair and the vice chair, Mr. McGinnis, Mr. Lemon, I have a lot of faith in those fellows, and I have a lot of faith in the other 23. And this is what they've decided that they wanted to bring before council. All of those meetings were cordial. There were certainly strong opinions, one way or another, the amount, the longevity, so forth. But 25 people care deeply about Edmond. And I know some of them are here, some of them are not. But for those that are in the room, thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, sir.
Honestly, I think Councilman Robbins and Councilman Moore said it very, very well, so I won't repeat it. But thank you very much. And I picked 5 amazing people, and I know the rest of you did too, who represent lots of different demographics in our community. And I feel really, really confident about the recommendation.
When we had a little meeting to update us on the recommendations of the committee, and I had heard back from a couple of people I had put on the committee, but it was lovely to sit in a room and have people that were watching this all unfold. And like everybody has said, it's 25 people with different walks of life, different employment, different ages, different amounts of how big their family is, big or small, home or still or raised and moved out. And I was thoroughly impressed from listening to the people that were telling us about all the recommendations. Again, how, like everybody said, sure, there's going to be opinions, and that's what we wanted. And I think that's why all of us put several different kind of people on this committee. We wanted people from all walks of life to tell us what they wanted in their community, as people should be able to tell you. It's their community. This is a big thing. It's an important thing, and it's a helpful thing to move this forward, this community forward. And I just my heart was so full when they said, yes, there were opinions flying, but the room stayed cordial. And I said, and did they come out of there after 3 meetings with all of this? And they said 3 meetings, and they came up with this list, the mill levy and the time. And I thought, that's just wonderful. And I was so happy. And I hope that anybody who has any questions about this GO bond can go online and watch those meetings so they know for themselves. But to know that this is a sample from your community that came together that wants nothing more than for their community to grow and to prosper and for it to be taken care of. And these are not people that are not going to be affected by this. Every single person that was in that room will be affected by this, and yet they still chose one. The list of projects is amazing. I am thrilled with that list of projects. And I even had a couple people that said, what do you want to see on this? And I said, no, I want to know what you want to see on this. I want your recommendations, because I'm Stacy, but I'm here to support and to represent the community. And in order to do that, I need to know what the community wants. So I know everybody has said this, and maybe it's overkill, but we are thrilled with how it all turned out and how everybody reacted during the meetings. And I'm just super happy how it all played out. And we have so much appreciation, because it was a lot. It was quick, it was intense, and it was a lot. And we thank you for stepping up for your community.
No, I don't think it's overkill, because I just remember before our current city manager, the past 10 or so budgets, the last line was in the city manager report, we need another funding source.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is historic.
Mm-hmm.
It's not overkill. We had intentional collaboration from a lot of people here. So council, what do you want to do on this item? 9D.
Motion to approve.
We have a
Second.
motion. We have a second. Any other discussion? Please cast your vote. Items passed. Thank you very much. Wow.